Happy Friday, everybody. It is the weekend, well, almost the weekend here, and fantasy football is back. Guess who we've got in the studio? It's Jim, aka the Maverick. What's going on, Jim?
Hey, Counselor, just ready to get this weekend started, man.
Are you ready to party or what?
I've been working too hard. You know, I'm going up to Denver for a few days early next week, so looking forward to getting out of town, doing some fun stuff. We're going to Elitch's amusement park, and we're going to go to the Meow Wolf up there. There's some cool stuff up in Denver, so looking forward to it.
I thought you were a big party animal. I thought you're getting to hitting the nightclubs this weekend. Guess not.
Oh man, are you kidding? No, let me tell you, Counselor, this is something that's very bad. I have been like crashing on my couch like right after 9 o'clock in the evening. I just completely crash, dead to the world, and I wake up at like 11:30. It is the lamest thing ever, and something I thought I would never do. I'm like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to be the kind of guy that just crashes on the couch at night while I'm watching television. No, and yes, it is happening to me, and I hate it. But yeah, that's my life now.
It's crazy when you get older. I remember going to the clubs and we would start our drinking at around 11:30, and then we're off to the club for like 12. And now it's like, dude, if I'm up by past 10:30, it's past my bedtime. It's crazy. Like, and people can relate. If you guys are in the comments, let me know if you relate as a dad or as a parent or even as an old person. Let me know if you guys can relate. Anyway, today we're talking about something very important. We are talking about regression candidates, potential busts. Are they going to regress based on last year? Because what happens is typically people come off these pinnacle years or they have anomaly years, including one of the guys we're going to talk about, you know, a guy like Raheem Mostert, for example, 20 touchdowns, right? And it's kind of like a one and done type season. So we're going to address a bunch of players here. We got about 10 players here. Are they going to regress this year? Because a lot of these guys may be drafted ahead, like expensive. They're going to be expensive, right? So are they the real deal or are they going to be fantasy football busts? Ready to dive in. Jim, I'm super pumped, man. Fantasy football is back. And I got an announcement or two here. We're going to go through a couple things in the news here. But part of the news...
We now have breaking news.
Thank you, Breaking Brad. I appreciate it. Part of the news is I'm lining up the interviews with the people that are coming to the Fantasy Sports Summit. So we're going to have Trey Benson actually on the actual podcast as well. We're going to have Kyron Williams on the podcast as well. We're going to have Tajay Spears actually on the podcast. We're actually going to have them on the show. I'm going to talk to them, but you guys can have a chance to ask them questions and hang out with them live August 21st for the Fantasy Sports Summit. So if you haven't got the summit, guys, grab your ticket to the Fantasy Sports Summit below. Guys, I cannot express to you how big this is, guys, this sports summit. It's never been done to actually make fantasy and reality together, Jim. I'm super excited about it, man. Aren't you?
Oh, absolutely, man. It's going to be great.
It's never been done. And what I wanted to do is really create something like when I was doing fantasy, I wish somebody had done this for me, right? And that's why I created the 16-round draft solution as well. So if you haven't got that, I want to offer a better way to give advice, practical advice, not the cookie cutter stuff. And if you remember last year, my memory is clear. And I remember last year, everyone told you Tony Pollard round one. Everyone told you Austin Eckler first, second overall pick. Everyone told you Dalvin Cook round 5, J.K. Dobbins round 4, Mike Williams round 5, T. Higgins round 2, and on and on and on and on. Just telling you to draft on ADP. You can avoid all this and get all the optimal players. Grab 16-round draft solution right now. We also got the plus tool if you want the convenient app that Jim created as well. You can get that as well. Guys, so much we're offering here. And it's like we do this intro and we want to give you guys value. This isn't just like, buy my stuff. It's actually stuff that's going to help you succeed and stuff that you can actually enjoy. So that's it for the plugs, man. I want to get to the news here, before we get into the show. Again, there isn't much in the news.
We now have breaking news.
This is actually not breaking, but it was on the 16th. This is like 2-3 days ago. I do really want to talk about, because you and I haven't talked about it. We didn't record it. Actually, we ended up recording our show, I think, the day before it happened, Jim, our last episode. Right. But Brandon Aiyuk has requested a trade. Now, I don't understand all this hype with Aiyuk, and clearly the 49ers don't understand it either, because they didn't pay him what he wanted. I think he got offered 26 to 28 million or something. They offered him. He turns it down. Like, who does this guy think he is? I know he's good. I just don't think he's that good. Brandon Aiyuk, and apparently the Commanders and Steelers are potential recipients of him if he does trade. But the 49ers, as the time of this recording, things could change today, overnight, but from the time we record this, from the time we release this, the 49ers don't want to trade him. Isn't this crazy, Jim, all this Aiyuk hype? I don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to the salary cap, it's hard to keep the band together when the band starts asking for a lot more money. And so that's the situation that the Niners are in. Now, they do have him under contract for this year. So he's kind of like locked in that he has to play. But, you're talking about the potential downside of him being disgruntled, of him not really putting in the effort, of him trying to avoid injury. That's a huge negative for him. And then there's also just the fact that he could go to another team and could really wreck like what the situation is on the other team. Like there
George
was also
Pickens.
those rumors talking about Devontae Adams getting traded to the Jets to reunite
Yeah.
with Aaron Rodgers. That would just destroy Garrett Wilson's value, and it
Or-
would also hurt. I mean. I already think Devontae Adams is overdrafted, but regardless, there could be some really bad things to happen for fantasy drafts as
George
a result of these
Pickens.
trades.
Like you said, George Pickens, if he ends up on the Steelers, like Pickens is prime for a ton of volume. If he ends up there, it's just going to buzzkill Pickens. Like he's just going to be,
Absolutely.
It's going to game over.
And
for
I personally, I don't think the Steelers is going to happen. I mean, in the entire time I've been a Steelers fan, I don't think I've ever seen them spend big money to acquire a wide receiver one.
Never.
They never do it. They don't even pay the wide receiver ones that they have on their team. They just like let them walk when their initial contract's up. So I don't really see that happening. And there are a lot of wide receiver needy teams out there, teams like the Giants or New England or, stuff like that could really use some additional wide receiver help. But who knows what's going to happen, but it can be very, destructive for fantasy rankings and such. So
yeah, well, my
we'll
thoughts
see.
on this last thing on Aiyuk here is, again, I think he's a little overrated. That's the first thing. And second thing, it's like, if you have a player on your team, why would you want to keep somebody who doesn't want to be there? I'd try to move. I don't care. I guess money, it's the situation, it's juggling of money, what team he's going to go on, juggle this, juggle that. But it's like, if somebody doesn't want to be on my team, I just don't want him on my team. It's like, let's find a way to get rid of him, trade him, dump him, whatever it takes. He doesn't want to be here. Why would I want anybody on my staff if they don't want to be here? They're obviously disgruntled. How that's going to affect their game, we don't know. And you're still paying them something. Like, you're still paying them millions of dollars. They're not, it's not like you're not paying them $30 million a year, but you're still paying them. If I'm paying anybody $10, I'd want them to be here. I want them to be excited to show up for work. And it doesn't look like that's the case.
Right.
Other than that, there's nothing really else in the news. Again, Devontae Adams, that whole talk about him, Aaron Rodgers wanting him on the Jets, that's kind of like a turnoff for Garrett Wilson. Like, doesn't Aaron Rodgers believe in Garrett Wilson? Like, why would you even entertain the fact of bringing Adams? So he's so nostalgic, Aaron Rodgers. That's what I don't like about him. It's like, dude, focus on what you got. You got arguably one of the best running backs in the game in Breece Hall. You got Garrett Wilson, who's a stud wide receiver. You got some of your old scrappy backups, from other teams that you brought in for the Packers, whatever. It's like, dude, focus on Garrett Wilson. If you bring Adams in there, now he kind of becomes the one, but he's kind of at his tail end of his career. Garrett takes kind of a back seat just simply based on the rapport that Adams had with Rodgers, and it's a mess. So that's something that's bothering me a little bit. It's like, do I now trust Garrett Wilson? Does Aaron Rodgers trust Garrett Wilson? Like, I don't know. I don't like this.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a great situation. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think the Jets have that kind of salary cap to be able to bring Adams over. But it's just one of those things. It's just rumor at this point. So unless something happens, it doesn't really matter. So.
All right, we want to thank Breaking Brad for the breaking news. Breaking Brad, thank you for being here, man.
We now have breaking news.
He doesn't change his tune, that guy. It's always the same thing. I wish he'd say something differently, but he doesn't. Breaking Brad, are you ever going to change anything you say?
We now have breaking news.
I guess not. It's not going to happen. All right, let's rip through this. Regression candidates here. First one is your guy. You've kind of brought, because we have a list. We kind of put our list together. Certain guys that he kind of puts on the list. Jim puts on the list. Certain players that I put on the list. So first one is CeeDee Lamb. I mean, this goes pretty obvious, right? CeeDee Lamb, regression candidate this year, but will he bust? I don't think so.
I don't think he's going to bust. I don't see that at all. But one of the things that I like to avoid, I've talked many times about how I love contract year players. Love them. They're great. Huge upside. CeeDee Lamb was a contract year player last year, and he had a career season. And when a player has their career season on a contract year, I see them as a big regression candidate. He got the bag. I'm sorry. He actually has not gotten the bag yet. He's still waiting
Yeah.
on a contract from Jerry Jones because Jerry Jones is an idiot. But he's going to be the highest paid wide receiver in the NFL this season by probably $32 million a year, something along those lines. But when they get that big bag of money, then all of a sudden their priorities change, and they're like, "Oh man, I gotta protect this body, this that's worth $32 million a year. I don't need to try as hard because I've got my contract extension. I'm locked in for another 3-4 years, whatever."
Right.
And so the motivation for them to play is different, not quite as intense as it was in the prior year. And because of that, I see they tend to drop off the year after they get that big contract extension. So, again, it's still a great situation. He in the app, he still rates as a 5-star upside player. He's got so much other stuff going for him that the negativity associated with being a regression candidate doesn't really hurt his overall upside score. So I'm still all in on CeeDee, but if it's a choice like between CeeDee Lamb and Tyreek Hill, or CeeDee Lamb and maybe Jamar Chase, who is on a contract year, I'm more inclined to take those guys that still have the upside to be the number one wide receiver as opposed to the guy that just did it. So
yeah, that's the issue I'm having. Like the 1,749 yards, the 12 touchdowns receiving, very, very hard to duplicate. The good news is he still has the rapport with Dak Prescott. And the thing is, they didn't bring in anybody else or draft anybody else that's going to supersede CeeDee Lamb. But again, this is why I love Jake Ferguson this year at tight end, because they don't have a really good wide receiver too. So everything is primed for another good year at a CeeDee Lamb, barring any injury. Now, typically, me, if anyone's going to say there's what goes up must come down, in CeeDee Lamb's case, I just feel it's still going to be good. I still think the grass is greener here. I don't think much is going to change other than a slight regression. So if I'm looking at a chart, is he trending up or down? He's definitely not trending up, but he's definitely coming down, but a touch. Is it a touch enough to push him out of the first round? Barely, I would think. That's kind of my sensing of I'm gauging the situation. So I don't feel there's an issue here at all.
I feel like his floor is probably still top five wide receiver. That's not that bad.
I mean, injury or holdout or something crazy like that is the only thing I see hurting him. But again, I'd rather go running back round one. Next guy here is Nico Collins. Now, we have to talk about this. I've been on this Nico thing this entire offseason. Now, that being said, Nico could come out, completely crush it, shut me up, and tear it up this year, but I highly doubt that. Now, last year, finished 12th in PPR, top 10 in standard, 1,297 yards. Listen to this, 106 targets, 80 receptions, 8 touchdowns. I will assure you that he will not see more than 109 targets with the addition of Stephon Diggs and Tank Dell back. Last year, sure, if you're the only one there, you're going to get the work. If I was the only wide receiver on the Texans last year and replacing Nico, I'd get 109 targets. Like, it's that easy. Now, and I don't think 109 targets is a lot of targets. Like, when you put that in context from a guy, let's say like CeeDee Lamb, 181, Devontae Adams, 175, Tyreek, 171, Garrett Wilson even, crappy quarterback play, 168, Amon-Ra St. Brown, 164, Puka, 160, and on and on. Diggs, 160 last year. And he's on the team. So it's like 109 targets, Jim, and they're drafting this guy in the second round. Well, you think he's going to get more targets? You think they're going to bring in Diggs and Dell and Joe Mixon and all, and their tight ends, and you think he's going to get more targets? And another thing, Jim, you got to take a look at. I looked at it. I don't have the stat in front of me. I got to pull it up. But CJ Stroud, when you look at attempts, I'm going to pull it up here. He was like not even top 10 in passing attempts. He was way down, I think 11th with 499. So he doesn't throw as much even as Jordan Love, who threw for 579, who finished, ahead of him. He finished like 5th in passing attempts, right? Mm-hmm. So Stroud finished 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, like 13th or 14th in passing attempts. Like, my math is not mathing right now, but he's out of the top 10 in passing attempts. And you expect Nico Collins to have this astronomical good year that you're going to spend a second round pick on Nico Collins? Get the F out of here. Come on, man. Like, talk about regression, talk about bust. I'm not in. Jim, are you in on Nico? This is crazy.
Yeah, I mean, again, he succeeded last year because he was very efficient with his limited usage. He's a lot like Brandon Aiyuk. Aiyuk got about the same amount of volume that he did. They were both very efficient with their receptions, and they got these gaudy receiving yards numbers as a result. And
Yeah.
so, I totally agree that how can he grow his role in this offense this year? And yes, he got paid. And yes, let's also talk about this. Last year was a contract year for Nico Collins. He had a career season. Do you think he's going to be able to do it again? And
No.
I'm thinking like, no, he got the bag, he got the extension, he got the money, and now he's in a much more crowded receiving room. I mean, last year it was really just Tank Dell and Nico Collins, and Tank Dell missed a lot of time. I think Tank Dell only did 12 games,
Yeah.
and so this year, Stephon Diggs and Mixon as the running back who's catching passes. You've got Dalton Schultz there as well, who's another guy who, how could he grow his role next year? He can't really grow it this year because of all these additional target hogs coming onto the team. So yeah, I mean, very expensive for Nico here. I'm just not seeing where the numbers are coming from, and I am out on Nico being able to do something this year.
Yeah, going back to that stat, I'd like to be right on. 14th in passing attempts with CJ Stroud. Again, you're drafting, it's crazy because you're drafting Nico round 2, you're drafting Diggs round 3, you're drafting, Dell round 4 to 5, typically round 5. He might not fall to 6. And what do you think, like CJ Stroud's going to throw at 10,000 passing attempts? It's crazy, man. I'm just not sold on the hype. Again, that being said, as a disclaimer, Nico can come out and finish as a top 3 wide receiver. Diggs breaks his leg week 1, and Dell gets hurt again, and then now Nico's number 1. So again, anything can happen, but if it's the way that it sits right now, you're banking on a Diggs catastrophic injury and a Dell injury for Nico to duplicate or come close to what he did last year. You need both those guys.
And that's a lot of ifs.
Yeah,
I wouldn't count on all those ifs happening. So yeah. It's so.
Okay, next guy here. I don't care for this guy. I kind of see the appeal a little bit, but Evan Ingram typically coming off around 5 to 6, especially a little bit earlier, give or take in tight end premium league. But Evan Ingram, they've added Brian Thomas Jr. I think he's going to get a lot of work. Ingram is safe. Like, he's not outstanding. He's safe because he finished high last year. Jim, what accounts to him finishing high? I mean, he only had 4 touchdowns. Yeah. What's the deal with Ingram? I don't see the hype.
The big deal was that he got 143 targets, which was number 1 amongst all the tight ends last year.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah. So, that's the big thing. And because he had 114 catches, man, in a tight end premium league, this guy was gold,
Yeah.
with 114 catches. But that was just kind of an anomaly. Trevor Lawrence was injured for the whole second half of the season, couldn't really throw the ball. So he was just keeping it close to the line of scrimmage. So Ingram just got peppered with targets, just tons of targets. And I don't really see that repeating this year. I see the targets being distributed because there's also Christian Kirk, there's a Brian Thomas Jr.
Yeah.
And you've got Etienne in the backfield who catches a lot of passes as well. So I just don't see there's any way that he can repeat that sort of volume. And so I see him falling back on both his yards and touchdowns this year, as opposed to what he had last year. So I feel he's getting overdrafted.
Yeah, I'm not seeing the hype at all with this guy. I mean, what did he do years before? Nothing. I'm going to pull up his stats here.
Well, he's been really good since he went to Jacksonville. Like in 2022, he had 98 targets, 73 catches, 766 receiving yards, and 4 touchdowns. That's really good for a tight end. That's a solid season. That's a solid.
He's not a touchdown guy though. Like 73 receptions in 2022, 4 touchdowns. Prior to that, the Giants did nothing. I mean, he's been a tight end, and he's been on the Giants since 2017. Crappy years all around. Has this anomaly year, and everybody's riding them. I don't believe it. I don't years to wow me. We're not wowed. You have one decent year and only 4 touchdowns in that year, and everybody's riding you. I'm not on the Evan Ingram train. I'm not a believer. Moving on to James Conner here, Jim. James Conner. Now we're having Trey Benson on the show. That being said, man, it's with James Conner, is he going to do well what he did last year? I don't see it, man. I don't see James Conner performing where he did with the addition of the young dynamic Trey Benson, who has an amazing ability to break tackles. I mean, the guy is a great, mix of size, speed. He's a robust running back, great vision. Again, that ability to break tackles, young, hungry. Should have came off in the second round, came off in round 3. And James Conner is coming off the board in drafts ahead of Trey Benson, which is ludicrous. I'm going to tell Trey Benson when he comes on the show that, like, dude, like, no, you're the one. I know that you're the one. You know that you're the one. And James Conner, again, years to wow us. We're not wowed. 1,000-yard rushing season. Coming off his pinnacle year in his, 8th or 9th season? Like, again, similar to Evan Ingram, I don't believe in these guys. Again, if you guys were outstanding, if you guys were good, you would have done it in season 1 or season 2 or season 3 or season 4 or season 5 or season 6 or season 7. Oh, there you are. Like, come on, man. Like, everybody gets, every time, even a squirrel gets a nut once in a while, right? What's the old saying, right? It's like, come on. James Conner is just, it's smoke and mirrors to blind you from the Trey Benson value. I'm not in on this at all.
Yeah, I mean, one of the big concerns I have about Connor is the fact that this is his age 29 season. He has been in the league for 8 seasons now. He has a robust injury history. He's missed 4 games in each of the past 2 seasons. And now you've got this younger competition coming in who could take over this backfield. I mean, it's not going to take much. That being said, Connor has been a quality play. I mean, last year he got like 5 yards per carry. That's impressive. That's really impressive for his age. But Mother Nature comes for us all, and it's a brutal sport. And I only see his risk of injury increasing and his risk of a decline in production increasing as well. And so, again, for me, he's just much too risky for where he's going on the draft, even though he looks like he's being discounted right now. I'm not really in on it. But that being said, Arizona is going to be a better team this year. They are going to be better. So.
I'm 150,000% out on him. 150,000%. All right, next guy is not only regressing, he's falling off. He's going to be the backup. All right, next guy here, and be like, how could you say that? Because I am, and I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing here. Brandon Aiyuk here, round 2 to 3. This is, I think, your regression candidate here. I mean, it's a mess with Aiyuk, and yet he's still going off. I'm taking a look at a high stakes league right now. I'm going to pull up where he came off here. I think I saw him in my league, in my 2K buy-in league. He came off round 3, right after Deebo Samuel. I see him here as well, coming off at the end of round 3. So this is, again, another high stakes league I'm looking at that was yesterday. So I'm kind of aware on where he is, coming off. And it's typically round 2 to 3, but typically not round 3 because of this drama. I mean, another guy who I think is kind of fool's gold. I don't think he's that good of a receiver. Like, I just don't think he's ultra elite. I think the 49ers think the same way I do because, again, they offered him that money. We talked about it, at the beginning of the show in the news. I'm just not sold on this guy. I don't think he's that good. And he's going to go probably potentially buzzkill somebody else in Pittsburgh, or I don't think he'll end up in Pittsburgh, like you said, but maybe Washington. I'm not even sold on McLaurin, but I like Jaden Daniels. That gives Jaden Daniels a bit of a spike. I don't know, man. Definitely a regression. I just don't know how much. I don't know what's going on with him, but because of all these flags and question marks, uncertainty, disgruntledness, lack of paying him or wanting to pay him, all this trade talk, all this, I want to get traded, all this stuff, this diva, ungratefulness. No, he's a hard pass. He's going to be a bust this year. I don't like him, Jim. Too many question marks, man. Too many.
Yeah. And again, we're talking about another player who was on a contract year last year and had a career season. And the thing is, when you look at his stats, he really only had a career season for efficiency. He's a low volume player. Last year, 105 targets. That's it. And taking a guy with that low of volume in the second or third round is not a great idea. And you look at the year before, he actually had almost the same number of catches. He had 78 catches in 2022, but that only turned into just over 1,000 yards, 1,015 yards. Last year, he turned 75 catches into 1,342 yards. And at least last year, you could have gotten him in the 7th or 8th round or something like that. That's where he was going. But this year, to spend a second round pick on this guy just doesn't make any sense. Now, even if he gets moved to another team where there's like no wide receivers, like New England or something like that, he's still too expensive for here, but I would consider him because then he'd be the one. Then he'd be a clear number one. But right now, where he's at, I mean, again, I just see him falling back to what he did in 2022 this year. And, you throw in the fact that there could be a holdout, that he could be disgruntled. Maybe he doesn't try as hard. And there's Ricky Pearsall on this team. Ricky Pearsall is all of a sudden on my radar. Like, this is a guy I got to start looking at to maybe draft, because you never know what's going to happen with these guys. So,
yeah, I told you about him like a month ago. You weren't high on him, but I understand why, because he'd be like the fifth target there on that offense, right? And they were talking about him doing like punt returns and stuff like that. But you don't draft a guy in the first round, like bench him typically, unless you're like the Chargers and you do that with Quentin Johnson. But other than that, I just don't see.
Quentin Johnson deserved it.
Yeah. But like I said, just give him targets. He wasn't getting the targets, and maybe that is because of his not being that good. We're going to find out this year. This is going to be a telling tale. I'll be watching a lot of Chargers and a lot of Ladd McConkey, because I got a lot of Ladd McConkey stock. All right, let's rip through these. I'm not going to spend too much time on the next guy. Christian McCaffrey, no way but down. That's it. All I want to say about Christian McCaffrey, I'm going to spend, let's do this in under a minute. Christian McCaffrey, Super Bowl hangover, just got married, just got paid $19 million a year for an extension at age like 30. This guy has no business getting paid $19 million near the age of 30. I'm not sold on this guy this year. He's coming down, man. What goes up must come down. 2 years banged up in 2020, 2021, 2 pinnacle years. This is the tiebreaker. Is he going to go up? It could go either way. And I think he's trending downwards. I'm out on McCaffrey. I think you're in on McCaffrey, aren't you?
Okay, so just to let you know, he's not 30. This is his age 28 season. He's going to be 28 this season. So it's still a danger time period, right? I mean, he's almost as old as James Conner. And so the risk of running backs declining at age 28 it happens all the time. Still, that being said, I see him as a risky pick this year, but I think he's still a great pick, because it's just such a great situation, a great offense. We've seen his usage. It is top notch, man. I mean, it's a top notch offense. So, if you're willing to accept the risk that he could hit the wall this year, and it is absolutely in the realm of possibilities. If he hits the wall, you're going to very much regret taking CMC. But if he continues to play, and he can play all the games, and since he's been to San Francisco, he's played in all the games, I do believe. Maybe he's missed one. The situation around him is just fantastic. So I'm inclined to, like, if I have the number 1 overall pick, maybe I'll take a chance on Christian McCaffrey if I don't want to go elite wide receiver. Just know it is a risky pick, and there is the chance that he could pull an Austin Eckler this year. It could happen. So
we now have breaking news.
CMC has now been sidelined due to a hamstring injury. It's a non-contact injury, week 3, and he's out for the next 6 weeks. I hear it already. Breaking Brad has broke it. There you go. I don't know. Call me crazy. I just see a regression. Next guy, it's an obvious one here. He's going down, is Raheem Mostert. Mustard, right? It's so funny. Raheem Mostert. Who's the other Mustard in the league, Jim? We were talking about another Mustard in the league. Anyway, Raheem Mostert. What was it?
I can't remember right now, but
yeah, I had this funny joke about mustard, and anyway, it is what it is. It was Dijon. It was Bijan Mustard, right? Because he's got the Bijan Mustard. We got Raheem Mustard. Right. I just can't seem to catch up with all these names. There's my joke of the day. Is that bad, Jim?
It's terrible. That is terrible. Do you have that want sound effect? Because you can play that right now.
I don't have it right now, but that was pretty bad. Get it, guys? Raheem Mostert, Bijan Mustard couldn't catch up. And anyways, Raheem Mostert is definitely going down this year. Not even with injury. Like, I mean, in points. Like, I mean, what do you have? Like 30 touchdowns last year, 100 touchdowns last year? Like, and you look at the years before, we talked about this, like, talk about years to wow us, we're not wowed. And he has like 21 touchdowns last year, like 18 on the ground, 3 receiving, just over 1,000 yards. Who does this guy think he is? Derrick Henry? And then like, but I still think he's going to get some work. Like, I still think he's good enough to be a pest. But here's the thought. Here's what really gets me with this situation, okay? Raheem Mostert coming off this like astronomical record running back year. And they keep just copy and paste. You're telling everybody to draft Devin Singletary round 3 and Mostert round 7, 8, like later. but you're willing to draft Connor ahead of young dynamic Trey Benson. Trey Benson, I think, is going to be way better than Achane. And it's weird because I think because Achane's been in the NFL, he averaged at 7.8 yards per carry. So the Sheeps are kind of sold on this little hype with Devin Achane, right? They also drafted Jaden Wright. Like it's a mess. It's a wide receiver by committee. You've got two other
running back by committee.
See, there you go. We cover each other. There you go. Running back by committee. Because I was thinking wide receivers too. Because you got Waddle and Tyreek on the outside who are going to demand targets. Jim, this is crazy, man. I don't see, the hype with Achane, and I definitely see a regression here with Mostert, man. It's nuts.
Yeah, and Mostert this is his age 32 season. This is like so far past the expiration date on running backs. But then on the flip side, Mostert really didn't get used for like the first 5 years he was in the system. But let's look at his 2022 stats. In 2022, he had 181 touches for 891 yards and 3 rushing touchdowns, along with 2 receiving touchdowns. And then somehow yet last year, not only did he get the 21 touchdowns, but that's like more touchdowns than I think he had ever scored during his entire prior 8 seasons. I mean, it's just so unreal that he was just in this zone. He was just in the flow last year. And kudos to him. I mean, geez, I don't know how he did it. 18 rushing touchdowns, 3 receiving touchdowns, but I see him crashing back down to earth and possibly the potential of hitting the wall, which is much easier for a 32-year-old running back to have at his age after that kind of usage on the prior season. I mean,
yeah,
dude, I mean, it's a huge risk. Luckily he's not like in the top 3 rounds, right? He's not like, they're not asking you to spend a top 3 round pick on this guy, but yeah, I just don't see how a 32-year-old running back is going to be able to do what he did last year or anything even close to it. So
yeah, and it's believe what they do. If they wouldn't draft a top speedster in Jaden Wright, they wouldn't have Jalen Wright or whatever. They wouldn't, Devin Achane. They wouldn't, believe in him. And I don't know, man. It's a committee. It's ugly. It's a disaster. It was an anomaly year for Mostert. It's major regression, major bust this year. But again, I understand there's a bit of a value to him, but I'm not touching him. This is your guy here, regression, Michael Pittman. He's always been like a boring guy. Like there's nothing about Michael Pittman. I look at him and I'm like, oh yeah, Michael Pittman. I see the ceiling. Got to draft that guy. Finished 13th last year. Just very boring. He's a little engine that could. Only 4 touchdowns, just over 1,000 yards, 1152. I don't know. I look at him, man. I'm just not excited. Like I'm looking at his seasons before. What has he done? He's had, 1,000-yard receiving season 2021. 2022, 925, always 4 touchdowns, 6 touchdowns was his pinnacle in 2021. His rookie year, what do you have, 1 touchdown? I don't know, man, he's boring. And then Anthony Richardson, are we really sold on him delivering the ball on a high level? It's almost like a rookie quarterback because we only saw a small sample size. And with the sample size we saw, he was rushing more than a running back, Anthony Richardson. So, dude, I don't know, man. I'm not seeing the Michael Pittman hype. I'm not seeing it. It's not appealing to me.
Well, one thing I do like is his volume. We talked about some of these other guys like Aiyuk and those guys that are these Nico that are extremely low volume. I mean, 105 targets, 110 targets. He had 144 in 2022 and 156 targets in 2023.
Yeah.
That's elite level volume. That's just based on that. I think I'm willing to say that this guy is a great choice, especially in the 3rd round, to get that kind of volume in the 3rd round. Yeah, I mean, again, last year, contract year, year, pinnacle season, and he got paid. So, it's like, dude, all the incentives now are on the wrong side of him being able to repeat what he did. Plus you got the fact that he's with a different quarterback now. Last year, who was the quarterback there? He's now on the Raiders.
There's Adam
Minshew is the one who's throwing him balls. Yeah. And so Minshew, we know, is a pretty decent pocket passing quarterback. That's not Anthony Richardson's game. So, anyway, I think he's fine. I call him a risky pick this year just because of the risk of decline, because of these unknowns. But his volume still should be great. And he is still the number 1 receiver on this team. So that's also very positive. So, But for me, I'm just like, I think I'd be looking elsewhere, but I do like the volume.
Yeah, I'm going to pass on Pittman. I don't trust Richardson. Don't trust Pittman. Don't trust his offense. It's all up in the air. It's all predicated, on the back of Anthony Richardson. Okay. Next one here. I'm not seeing the hype here at all. Devin Singletary, another one that had an anomaly type year. I know you like Devin Singletary. He played on the Texans, which was a very efficient offense. He got the opportunity. They didn't have any wide receivers to throw to. And now you're telling me he's going to be the starter on the Giants, where Saquon Barkley, who is the superior running back physically and mentally, and just a better overall running back. You're telling me that Devin Singletary, you're going to go from Saquon Barkley to Devin Singletary as your starter? I remember I went to training camp in Buffalo. I saw this guy live at training camp. He's just a little scat back. There's nothing special about this guy. Had a decent year last year, Jim. I want to put this on record. Singletary sucks. Devin Singletary gears to wow me, and I'm not wowed. I know Jim's a little more excited about him. I'm just not.
Why are you hating on him so much? He had a quality season last year. And, last year he did what a lot of players, they get released by their initial team, right? And then they go out into the market, and there's not much of a market there. So Singletary did a 1-year prove it deal to show that he is valuable. And you know what? He went ahead and he supplanted Dameon Pierce as the number 1 running back on this team. And he was good. He was getting over 4 yards per carry. He had 38 targets, had over 1,000 scrimmage yards. So, now he's going to the Giants. And yes, the Giants are a downgrade in just about every metric compared to the Houston Texans. But who else is on this team? There's no one else in this backfield. So if he's going to get
Tyrone Tracy.
Tyrone Tracy, a 5th round, who cares, right? Who cares? This guy, if he gets all the work, and we've seen this, if a running back gets all the work, even if they suck, they're going to be good for fantasy because they're just getting so much volume. And I can absolutely see that happening with Singletary and at the Giants. It's just like there's no one else there to compete with him. And he proved it last year. He proved how valuable he is. So, I see him as a risky pick, but I see him as a good value. Again, he's like a ADP 105, right there, 9th round. That's not a bad place to take someone like Singletary, who's going to get all the work. By the way, I do have him on my dynasty team. I think he is going to be a startable asset this year. So
some quick stats on him. He has never had more than 7 rushing touchdowns in a season. He has not had more than 900 rushing yards on the ground in a season. And last year, only 4 touchdowns, 898 yards on his best year with 216 plus attempts, right? Just, he gets a couple receptions here and there. And even in the receiving, he's supposed to be a pass catching back, 0 receiving touchdowns last year. 0. The year before, 1. The year before, 1. He's only had 4 receiving touchdowns in 5 years. That's less than 1 receiving touchdown a year. This guy sucks. His stats, I'm looking at his stats. I look at the numbers, and this guy is garbage. He's not a good player. So it's a waste. And again, this is the delusion of hey, he's going to be our RB1. He's not anybody's RB1. He's not even good enough for the CFL. Watch, he's going to be one of the biggest busts this year. Mind you, he's a value, around 7 to 8 value, but I guess the Consheeps are even aware that this guy is not good. So that's all I got to say about Singletary. I got my hate on for him because he buzz killed. And that's the thing, right? Everyone had Dameon Pierce, including myself last year, as the starter. And in comes Singletary. I don't get it. That shows you how bad Dameon Pierce is. Don't get me started on how bad Dameon Pierce of a running back he is. He's terrible. You and I could go in and replace Dameon Pierce because he did nothing.
I don't think so.
I can't. I'm
but go in on a prove it deal and they prove it. You know what? Yeah. I'm convinced it's not just an anomaly. I think he's good enough. And I think at his ADP, this guy can be an every week flex. So I'm totally fine with drafting him in fantasy. I think he's a decent value at his ADP. But that's where I am with him. But yeah, he does have some risk, but I think it's a managed risk at his ADP. So
Okay, last guy here, not the most exciting guy to talk about, but Baker Mayfield. I mean, round 13 ADP. Why do you think there's a regression here?
Okay, well, last year was kind of surprised. Nobody was giving Baker Mayfield any love last preseason, and he came out and he put up a QB1 season, and I think a big reason of that was because of Dave Canales, who was the offensive coordinator, who did wonders with Geno Smith the year before, came in. Helped Baker Mayfield become a better quarterback. But I think a lot of it is an illusion. I think a lot of it is going to regress back because we know that Baker Mayfield is not very good. He is a failed quarterback. And we saw what happened to Geno Smith after Dave Canales left him last year. He fell back down to earth. I think the same thing is happening with Baker Mayfield. And, as far as a QB2 goes, not real excited about taking him as my QB2 because of the risks associated with him regressing, as I do expect him to do. Back to everybody will remember, like, oh, I remember why we didn't like this guy.
Yeah, so a lot of these guys, years to wow us, we're not wowed, coming off anomaly years. Will they regress this year? Very, very possible. All right. If you're new to the channel, smash it, tap it, slap it, hit the thumbs up, and grab the 16-round draft, which we've linked it below. It'll put you light years ahead of the sheep. That's it, Jim. Hope everybody's enjoying, the drive. Hope you guys have a great day. Happy Friday. I'll keep the content coming to you on the weekend, vlog style. I'm excited, man. Football's back. We got Trey Benson on the show. Kyron Tajal coming on the show next week. It's going to be an exciting week. That's it, Jim.
Yeah, and training camp's opening right now. So we're probably going to have some training camp news also. That'll be good.
That'll be good. We're going to see everybody tooting everybody's horn. Oh, I love this guy. This guy's doing great. Blah, 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 blah. So we're going to see. This is where the tire meet the road, whatever. You know what I mean? The tire meets the road. The rubber touches the road. You get this whole saying.
Right.
All right,
just
guys.
remember, everybody out there, don't believe what the coaches say. Watch what they do with the players. That's going to give you the best idea as to what's going on with these guys. Don't buy the hype and the smoke that they're going to be blowing on these players during training camp. That's not what you need to pay attention to. Pay attention to how those players are getting used on the field in scrimmages.
Yeah, like last year, everybody was like, happy birthday, Austin Eckler. We love our Austin Eckler. Well, you didn't pay him, and he sucked. So you guys knew that the whole time. So that's a quick example, Chargers last year. So yeah, they always hype up their players, but like, are you paying your players? Are you doing stuff? Social media team is different than the actual, when the pen meets the paper. So that's it, Jim. Pretty much it for today, guys. Hope you have a great day and stay sharp out there. Line up. We'll talk soon. Bye, Breaking Bad. We'll see you later.
We now have breaking news.
There you go. Bye from Breaking Bad.
Have a good weekend, everybody.
Take care. We're out.